Welcome to the AirCon Vault. Here you can find recordings of the live streams from Eric's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors. A sound effect, Audiokinetic, Boom Library, Bright Skull, Dolby, Fmod, Game Audio Learning, Game SoundCon, Kilohertz, Motion Picture Sound Editors, Rev Rooms, Sound Cuts, Sound Warriors, and Airwiggles, the online home for audio creatives. We hope you enjoy the video.
Sweet. Let's get these slides up. And full disclosure, my cat has been giving me some backup vocals. They're impromptu, but if you hear her, her name is Maddie, and she's very talented. All right, without further ado, we're going to get into the slides. So my name is Sabrina, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm a psychology-driven sound designer who strives for wildlife conservation. I created this talk because I wanted a guide like this when I was starting out. Let's reveal the influential paths you can take as sonic storytellers. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a frog scientist. I didn't realize that was a real job back then, unfortunately, so I studied psychology and played tennis instead. My mentor in college inspired me to learn about climate change and do years of public service to qualify for a sustainability MA. After getting my BA in psychology, I taught in Thailand, served at City Year, and did marketing for a reforestation nonprofit. David Lynch was a growing influence at the time. His book showed me the power of audiovisual storytelling, so I enrolled in film school instead. Their audio courses resonated with me, so I found production sound mixing and post-sound gigs after school. The grueling days on set, followed by binges of Breath of the Wild, eventually convinced me to pivot to game audio. 1 year later, GDC's Climate Crisis Workshop stoked my flame for pursuing wildlife conservation again. Nowadays, I'm integrated into the green game and film community. I've mentored devs in climate jams, podcast edited for the Climate6 Doing Our Bit, fundraised for Earth% with my sound libraries, volunteered with the Colorado Environmental Film Festival, and audio directed a game that was part of Steam's Earth Appreciation Festival. What I've learned from these experiences is that weaving what is meaningful to you into your career is definitely attainable. Let's explore how you can do this in under 25 minutes. Today I'll reveal 1. Quick and consistent actions you can take to benefit key causes. 2. How to nurture and find communities with like-minded souls. And 3. How to maximize your impact. At the end of this talk, you'll get a QR code full of resources we'll discuss today and put them into action. I also found in media these animated GIFs. I love them. They're pretty unrelated, just as a fair warning. There are easy steps that all of us can take at work and at home that put less pressure on the planet. This is where I'd start if you only have a few minutes. The first step is to unplug, power down, and use energy-efficient electronics in your office. Or use energy-saving modes that use less CPU when you're idling like Fortnite does. This makes our devices quieter for recording, can extend shelf life, and save money on our electric bill. It also reduces noise pollution and light pollution, making it easier for wildlife to navigate at night. As a bonus, if more wildlife is crossing your path, maybe you can record them. Next, use safe ways to toss hazardous products like batteries. You can ship electronics and batteries to a company called Trashy, which can also take your clothes so they can avoid into landfills. I actually just started this myself, and really colorful, cute stuff. That shrimp is so unrelated. All right, our best way for slashing emissions is limiting travel for events, using public transit, or carpooling. The next best thing is to thrift for recording materials instead of buying new. For Gore Food, you can use the Olio app to pick up ingredients that would be tossed by restaurants otherwise. Sometimes they also offer other waste products. Take that a step further by substituting food or single waste materials with ethical alternatives. All these suggestions can save us money and connect us to our local community. You never know when a chance encounter with someone on the light rail will lead to your lucky break. Circular design is a nonlinear, closed system for what we take and produce. This reduces waste since it's not reliant on single-use items. So consider repairing devices, buying used, or giving away hardware instead of just tossing it. This can also apply to other personal products besides work ones. Xbox has its own program for repairing their devices, for example. You can also donate to AfroRack, which gives youths of color access to music technology through the donations of synths and other electronics. Finally, find repair circles near you or set up a digital marketplace of your own. Your favorite Discord server may have one already. Composers have many ways they can contribute their skills to the climate crisis. Sustained Music in Nature makes themed albums with select artists to raise money for environmental initiatives. Refuge Alaska is their most recent one, and they're on the lookout for new musicians to collaborate with. For those in the game industry, Shell Wong's annual charity jam raises money for able gamers with this compilation album. You can also create your own experimental album to showcase how you've used animals in your work. An ecologist and musician named Biota shows you how you can turn animal vocalizations into beats with that album. Musicians can use their songs to raise money for Earth Percent, Brian Eno's environmental charity. All you need to do is donate a percentage of your revenue to them annually. There's also a UN initiative called Sounds Right, where you credit nature in your OSTs to give nature royalties. Their goal is for people to appreciate and respect nature more, so they advocate for it. It's essentially fundraising that's embedded into your workflow, so I highly recommend it. There actually is a huge document that you can scan after this with all of these resources and a guide to put them into place, so good news on that front. There's no reason creators of sound libraries can't do this work with their work too. I do this with Earth Percent, and there are much bigger names who partake as well. Axel Wild, who you might recognize from Soundly's documentary about how he records birds worldwide, does this too. Then there's George Vlad, Andy Martin, who's in the chat, thanks Andy, and Thomas Rex Beverly. These are three huge names in field recording who contribute AAA games and to Hollywood films alike. Finally, there's Martin Stewart, who teamed up with Stuart Copeland to use his famous nature recordings in his concerto for the environment. We'll talk more about Martin Stewart a bit later. Field recordists are a fit for initiatives relying on capturing the sounds of nature. Take Earth.fm, a streaming service full of long-form nature recordings that raises money for environmental charities. Melissa Pons runs it and interviews field recordists for her streaming service as well. It could be a good opportunity for visibility in more ways than one. Recordists can also be citizen science or do bioacoustic research. Consider contributing to the Macaulay Library in eBird, which uses the Cornell Lab of Ornithology as data. Then there's iNaturalist, where you can upload wildlife recordings that will be studied. Their International Day for Biodiversity campaign is actually happening now through May 31st, so you can sign up if you can. We really benefit from being outdoors too, so recording practices can be considered part of your mental health routine. Being out in the sun can regulate your circadian rhythm, boost your serotonin, give you vitamin D, and lift your mood. Forest bathing or being around lots of trees can also relax us because we're smelling the terpenes that they're emitting. Back indoors, what many nonprofits desperately need are good podcast editors. Their message can get lost when the audio quality or content editing is poor. There are many podcasts to choose from in and out of media, so feel free to shop around. Sound designers can use this as an opportunity to contribute immersive sound effects to podcasts as well. Another place dialogue editors and voice actors shine is audiobooks. LibriVox accepts voice recordings for books in the public domain, for example. There's also local libraries that help with this as well, and the Perkins School for the Blind. I believe the gargantuan educational PDFs some institutions release could benefit from audiobooks too. So offer your services with that if you're feeling bold. One of the most intense options you can choose is an audio-visual installation. This interactive art can involve any type of audio professional. When pulled off, it can reach a huge audience. Root for Nature on the left was funded by National Geographic and the David Suzuki Foundation. Arboreal Severance in the middle explored humans' fractured relationships with the Earth. Finally, To Cook combined electronic music with indigenous Greenland and Arctic voices. It was funded by Earth Sonic, and nearly half of their proceeds went to the nonprofit In Place of War. This experimental nonprofit doesn't just fund audiovisual installations. They do a nature residency in Alaska and curate albums that bring Indigenous people, musicians, researchers, and artists together. The common thread throughout their projects is that they raise awareness for endangered species and areas. They show us that we can push the boundaries of how our skills and art are applied when we team up for the same initiative. Integrating ourselves into a community of like minded professionals and friends is the key to unlocking more unique, impactful opportunities. Next, I'll show you how to expand your inner circle of like minded peers and practice applying sustainable design principles to your work. If you're in house, encourage your employer to join the Sustainable Games Alliance. It's a co op that collaborates and educates one another on the best ways to make games ethically. Playing for the Planet is another good option. They're a UN-backed organization that supports game studios who make public pledges to the environment. There's also Games Forest Club, which gamifies planting trees in real life for studios. Finally, consider putting your games on Planet Play. They're a marketplace on Steam that donates to environmental organizations. You can find a lot of the devs involved in these organizations in the SGA Discord and in the IGDA Climate SIG. Their Discord is full of volunteer opportunities, resources, and monthly calls. They also had a podcast about green game development called Doing Our Bit. Definitely give their big server and one of their initiatives a try if you have the bandwidth. The co-chairs are welcoming and incredibly impressive. They also run the climate crisis workshops at GDC and other talks, so look out for them if you go next year. Another way to meet pro-social game developers is by going to the Games for Change Festival in Manhattan. You can volunteer in person or judge games for the festival to get a free ticket. Other notable communities are the Game Audio Diversity Alliance and the Sustainable Entertainment Alliance, which I learned about just yesterday. For those in linear media, Hollywood Climate Summit is an awesome event in LA and online from June 3rd to June 4th. Their online version is donation-based, so anyone can afford it. This year, the Jurassic Rebirth team, Netflix, sustainability leaders, and more will be speaking there. It's a great way to network with inspiring professionals and learn from a wide variety of experts. I also recommend volunteering for an eco-centric or pro-social film festival. They tend to need AV folks, theater mixers, people who can record interviews, and music for their promotional videos. The Colorado Environmental Film Festival gives volunteers the opportunity to interview filmmakers and judge their films too. Festivals are great sources of infotainment and also give you access to the featured filmmakers. Just like with game summits, check out after-hours networking events that might be run by one of the studios in the festival. Opening nights and closing nights can be other spots where audience members can mingle with the filmmakers. You may even get a discount if you can prove that you work in the the film industry, depending on which festival it is. Another way to volunteer your time is to join game jams that are exclusively focused on sustainable practices. They're an easy way to meet and collaborate with other game devs. The first two jams I recommend trying are Solar Punk Jam and Just Play Jam, which are hosted by Anima Interactive. You may recognize that name because they're creating the game Take Us North, which is a game about migrants who are seeking asylum. There's also the 3-day-long Regenerate Jam, which is Neva Kay's game jam about sustainable farming practices. She's also one of the co-chairs of the IGDA Climate SIG and is very lovely. I mentored with her for this jam this year. IndieCade Climate Jam starts on July 1st and lasts 5 weeks, so you still have time to sign up. It provides access to mentors that educate participants on green game design. Finally, there's Playing for the Planet's Green Game Jam, a special event where game studios work to launch a green game activation. This just means that their game is prompting the player to take a specific action outside of the game. Playing for the Planet has a different version of this jam that's for students too. If you're in school, introduce your university to Green Game Jam so that you can participate next year. Now that you know how to meet potential clients and collaborators, it's time to network. Thankfully, a shared mission makes it easier for peers to connect with us. However, expecting something from a person you're talking to can lead you to disconnect and stop listening. It's important to approach your relationships with a spirit of generosity instead. This builds goodwill and creates value for the community. It can take the form of a social media post, an introduction to someone else, or a great conversation. If you feel like you have nothing to give in these interactions yet, just remember that focusing on them and genuinely listening is the most valuable currency we have. People will remember that you gave your time to them and that you made them feel seen and heard. Finally, cultivate your network like you're a farmer planting and nurturing seeds. You want to avoid monoculture since the whole plot will be too vulnerable. This means branching away from other audio folks sometimes at networking events. Our networks need to have enough diversity and loose ties if we want a bountiful harvest that feeds the most people. We're fully armed for change when we combine the power of interactivity and storytelling with a tight-knit, ideally local community. But I've got bad news. None of that will matter if we don't establish where we're headed and if we don't prioritize our health along the way. These are non-negotiables. In this last section, I'll show you how to buffer yourself against the vulnerability of ferociously pursuing your mission. We need to know where we'd like our career to go to identify the right opportunities for us. The philosopher Seneca once said, "If one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable." This is why we're going to start this section by exploring our purpose. Pursuing our ideal career and identifying our purpose requires being systematic. Two great frameworks for this are Ikigai and SIO. Ikigai is a Japanese concept that says we find our reason for being at the intersection of what we love, what we're good at, what we can be paid for, and what the world needs. List these out if you need to and look for overlap. Then, take advantage of the eureka effect. Neuroscience shows us that our brains need to find rest to find solutions to complex challenges, which is a great excuse to take a break. Basically, resting, napping, etc. could give your brain that time to solve those problems. We can also find the nexus of our interests, skills, and current opportunities to identify a meaningful career. Focus on your strengths first in this framework. Then, ask yourself these questions. How will the world be better off thanks to you? Who are you when you are at your best? And who must you fearlessly become? Finding your purpose can't be rushed, but these data points can let your brain work behind the scenes on your behalf. We need to get more comfortable with asks. Asking for help could be in the form of finding a mentor, getting feedback, receiving a referral, and much more. After all, the people who receive the most are the ones asking for the most. If this makes you uncomfortable, practice this in lower stakes situations first. You also need healthy beliefs and good habits to persevere. While there's no right time to act, some issues can't be ignored, such as chronic pain, disease, bad relationships, and depression. Discipline works when we need to do 2 more reps at the gym, but will not override a nervous system that doesn't feel safe. Ever knew you needed to do something important, but you felt like you couldn't move? You were probably in the freeze part of fight, flight, or freeze, not lazy. This can happen when you consider the potential for failure threatening, or when your desired habit doesn't match your identity yet. To prevent this, break your task into the tiniest step possible and reward your efforts instead of your results. This will train you to feel safer with making progress in a high-stakes task. Then reward the effort. I like to use a $2 massage ring or have some good chocolate. What if we realize the path we're on is not right for us anymore? This can happen, and that's what quitting parameters are for. Seth Godin, author of The Dip, suggests listing out exactly what would need to happen for us to give up our dream, such as going deaf. For everything else, we persist. He also says to identify projects that are cliffs and cul-de-sacs to know which commitments to ditch. Cliffs can only end with you falling and it hurting a lot. An abusive relationship is a brutal example of this. Cul-de-sacs are projects that won't get you anywhere. Maybe this is a dead-end volunteer project or a lukewarm hobby that's distracting you from honing a rare skill. It's life-changing to quit the right things immediately, but crippling to quit the wrong things because they were hard. According to author Cal Newport, highly priced qualities of our work like autonomy, impact, and high pay only come with rare skills. He says to hone your abilities, you can cash in what's called career capital later. In other words, stick with the stuff that serves your purpose and dump the bad shit ASAP. When we establish our purpose, we're clear on what aligns with our values. Not everyone has the luxury to choose what they get paid from, but if you can, consider whether a client or employer is a fit for your values before accepting the offer. If we like who is making a project, we can determine which projects are a fit for us by evaluating them based on 1, how they'll be made, and 2, what mechanics or themes the project covers. GreenGameDesign.com covers many of these games above in more detail, so you can learn more about what this entails since it's a big topic. Finally, we're going to need to educate ourselves on the causes we care about the most to come up with relevant solutions. Here are some places to start depending on your interests. There's a surprisingly wide variety of books on soundscape ecology for field recordists. Andy Martin, hello again Andy, the recordist who specializes in birds, highly recommended these. Bernie Krause's books are a good place to start since he's an ecologist and recordist who define what we hear in the natural world differently. He breaks soundscapes up into 3 categories: geophony, biophony, and anthropophony, and covers these in his TED Talk as well. The Climate 6 Environmental Game Design Playbook is a free and game-changing PDF. It's downloadable from their website and dives into what green game design is, plus how game designers can achieve it. You'll learn about environmental psychology, green game activations, and so much more. Another solid report is Gaming for Climate Action, which was created by an initiative that provides tech and tools to green game devs. A Garden Story is one of the games they helped. Gaming for Good was written by the CEO of Saibo, the creators of Subway Surfers. It's a breezy and optimistic read. The other 2 books are more academic. Playing for Nature was written by a professor who runs her own games program, and The Game Needs to Change was written by the previous co-chairs of the IGDA Climate SIG. There are many books about Ecocinema too. The one on the left even has a frame from Stalker on the cover, which is one of my favorite films. These invite you to dive into the history and the theory of ecocinema so that you can better serve environmental filmmakers. They could also be discussed at the summits we covered earlier. The Environmental Education Fund and Beaches Go Green are also companies that make ecocinema accessible. Beaches Go Green will show any participants in the area certain wildlife conservation films, and the Environmental Education Fund will bring these environmental films to film festivals. We're finally back to Martin Stewart, founder of The Listening Planet. This organization shares the famous field recordist's life's work publicly and makes educational projects. He has terminal cancer and wants to use the last of his time to preserve the voices of nature by collaborating with others. He recently launched an educational AR experience with other artists called Deep Field, which inspires children to make personal connections to nature. He's also working with other sound recordists to developing more inspiring programs like this. What legacy will you leave? How will the world be better off because you were in it? If you can answer that, you'll have your life's compass. We're almost at the end, so I'm going to invite you to share my mission to protect nature by taking just one of these tiny steps today. On social media, you can show how you use wildlife samples or resources in your work. For example, I used one of a parrot's calls in Airborne Empire. Sharing how nature is our equal by paying respect to it encourages others to do the same. When enough people appreciate nature and our fragile ecosystem, they go to greater lengths to protect it. Another easy step you can take is to share this talk or my resources page with at least one person so they can benefit. I also recommend that you consider signing petitions for nonprofits like the NRDC and make emergency donations to them since they only have a week to ward off Arctic drilling. This is audio specific, but can make a huge difference. Finally, I recommend that you scan this QR code to review all the resources we covered today and choose another tiny action you can take. You can build capacity for more contributions to the environment and initiatives over time. For now, you've taken a great first step, learning how to use your sonic superpowers for good. All right, I've got the QR code in the next one, so we'll see if it's there. Otherwise, I can post it a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. That was fantastic. I have to say, as someone who I like to think I'm very environmentally friendly, but I hadn't heard of so many of those resources or charities or organizations, so I feel enlightened now to know so many. You only have a few minutes left before we have to move on to the next talk, folks. So any questions, do get them in the chat, and I'll be able to go through a couple of them now. And yes, I will. It would be great if we can get the QR code and the list of resources into the Hangout space, or just to post on Airwiggles, because it'd be lovely to share some of these, because I'm so interested in so many of these. Let me go into some of the questions. So, you know what? Here we go. First question answer already. Is there a list of resources? Yes, it's right there. Here's a question, which is, are there any of the initiatives or projects or ideas you mentioned that you personally found the most rewarding to get involved with?
For me, it was most rewarding to get involved with the IGDA Climate SIG, because some of the people who were the co-chairs had the degrees that I contemplated getting, like the MAs in sustainability or sustainability consultants, and being able to help out these people who were actually employing what I initially thought I would do to games and storytelling just seemed like that perfect fusion of what I wanted to bring together. And I still am in touch with a lot of them. They really are the loveliest people, very wholesome.
Okay, thank you. We'll do two more questions. Here's one. This could be a spicy one. So, are there any companies, products, things to avoid that may be unexpectedly bad for the environment? You don't have to at anyone, but maybe there's something which, you know, most people don't really think about that maybe they could avoid.
Sure. Yeah, we could do kind of broader scope ones. So any kind of companies that rely on single-use items, so stuff like paper, plastic, cheap materials. Usually if you find something that's cheap enough, it's typically a sign that they're cutting corners for the environment. Like there's a company related to the NRDC actually called Who Gives a Crap that does all upcycled toilet paper and paper towels. I highly recommend them, but they're more expensive because of the effort and cost required. And just I think in general, if you're researching a company and you see anything related to how they treat their people being poor, or you know, having these massive data centers that are taking out water without a plan for how to give it back, that's usually what to avoid. For climate designers, they usually go for a circular economy, which means they try to have a closed system. Anything they make can either be mutual, given to someone else, the waste can go somewhere specific and come back. It's that linear form of production that tends to be toxic and extracts instead of like re-implements or recycles.
Okay, Sabrina, thank you so much. I would love to answer the last few questions, or ask the last few questions, sorry, but we are very tight on time. I must jump into the next one. So, Sabrina, thank you again so much for this, bite-sized, amazing insight to all these different resources and organizations. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
If you have any other questions, folks, for Sabrina, again, just go to the Airwiggles Hangout space, and you can just at Sabrina and ask your question there, and hopefully she'll be able to get back to you very soon.
Sure.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. And yes, Sabrina, wonderful having you again. Next year, we'll make it 4 years in a row. Thank you, everybody.
You so much. All right.